thanks for having us here. I think you got a good sample of Full Noise Find Your Voice Collective there. Thanks, Jacob. And that's, well, it's probably not full noise actually, it's probably about 50% or 75 maybe. There's a reason why I sat up at the back. But look, we're asked to talk about 5 things that we've learned about funding. And as you know, in any community project or any passion project, anything to do with the arts necessarily, money becomes a critical thing about what you do. So rather than 5 things that we've learned, I just want to talk about 5 things that we know that you need. And these are things that I think have driven us in what we've done. I think success is relative. So whether we're successful or any project is successful really comes back, I think, to these things and the ethic to which you start it with. The first one, we've got a clicker, have we? Oh, there we go. Is heart. And I think it always starts with a heart. And I think this is something that speaks largely to people in the arts in particular. But I think it's also anything to do with anything that's worth doing starts in the heart. I think our heart as an organisation is really to shift perceptions of people's value from one that's based on some sense of ability to something much bigger and much broader. And I think that's a very personal heart thing for me, and that's probably what drives me. And this is just a picture here, which I think, this is a Liam Barling original, by the way. Liam Barling, Warrnambool in a 2024, is that right? Warrnambool 24 or 23, this is all done in blue biro, so it's an exceptional piece of work. That's my daughter Grace, GK, Grace Kenny, some of you may know of her. Now, she sits there and stares over my back at everything I do. But not just that, when we have meetings or anything, she sits there. She's like a permanent presence. That's kind of a little bit creepy, but it's also a reminder of really why I'm heavily invested in what we're doing at Find Your Voice. And that's because you raise a kid to, you know, live into all their potential. And when your child comes to you and says, I want to do a world tour, yet everything in the world that surrounds us says, that is actually probably the last thing you will ever do. And there's something in me that kind of reacted against that. And so my sense was, well, maybe not a world tour, but why not explore the possibilities of you as an individual rather than be limited by some perceived idea of ability here. And so now she's working at Back to Back Theatre. It's a globally renowned theatre company based in Geelong. She's living a dream largely built on the work of people like Tom and people in the collective who actually start with that position, which is, actually, no, we'll start with you. We'll start with the human, we'll work our way out. And that's a hard thing. That's like something that you can't really put through your brain. It's a connection that happens at a human level, and that's really where we start. And I think all your projects, all the things that you think about, that's where they tend to start, is some human connection. And if you can humanise the project, if you can humanise what you do, you're 90% of the way there. And then the rest of it starts. So the second one, I think, is the gut. So this is instinct. And so, you know, you've got to have some intuition that you're onto something. If we look at the next picture, this is another picture that's fairly iconic in our organisation. It's a big, we've got it massive in the foyer when you come into our new premises. Come and visit us, by the way. There's another shot of it down there in the lighthouse there. This is here. Now what this represents is a momentary experience. If you're in that crowd or you're on that stage, at that moment in time, we're all sort of one. It was some very powerfully unifying experience that sort of transcended something. And that was an instinctual thing for us through that experience that, hang on, there's something here. There's something in the experience of fusing this heart thing with the arts that can help very rapidly change people's perceptions about stuff. And so that was where we started really to think about, well, how do you use the arts and collaboration and community as a vehicle for social change? So it's not just about the art. It's about something bigger. It's about a bigger impact. So we sort of had this sense and this feeling, and again, if you come back to all your projects and all the things you do, you've got that. You know, everyone sort of starts with the idea and the sense and the vibe and the heart. She says, but unfortunately, you know, the world's littered with broken hearts around, particularly the arts, you know, in terms of not being able to necessarily make that a reality. And I've got no doubt that, within this room and any room, there is a potential idea or a concept or an intuition that just needs some form of, we call it a scrum, you know, I like to use a rugby metaphor. You need a scrum around it to make it work. And that's where you've got to go to the third bit, which is your head. Is it, I have a head? Is that one? I hope so. Oh yeah, there's a head. And so that's the team stuff, and that's where you've got to apply your mind and collective minds and collective thought. And I think there was mentioned before about, you know, listening to people and accepting advice and all of these things. That's all part of it. You've got to build a strategy. You've got to build a plan. You've got to work out a way to pay the rent. You've got to work out a way to get people in jobs. Because otherwise, the good idea or the heart just fizzles away and flitters. Like we had the choir, we had that, was that 2019? That picture, I reckon it was. That was that experiential moment. We were on the verge of collapse. And it wasn't necessarily out of a lack of heart or a sense that this thing was going to have legs. It was everyone was cooked, like properly cooked. You know, getting 250 people on stage, performing those shows were amazing, but it was all volunteer. It was too much. And so we had to build a model that could sustain the workforce, sustain our people, sustain the energy, sustain the vision. Because if you don't have that, you've got nothing. You'll just crash and burn. And so we build, we create, we kind of shamelessly self-promote, you know. We find ways to fund the vision, and that's not pretty work. That's often the bit that gets lost. That's where you've got to sub people in, and you need help. You need philanthropists. And I will speak specifically to philanthropy. Fletchers have been critical to us, but the local philanthropists in Warrnambool are incredible. We went to them with an idea, I reckon it was it 2021 maybe? We're a full voluntary organisation. We said, look, give us $100,000. If you give us that, we will turn this into something else. And within 2 or 3 years we did it. If it wasn't for the philanthropy, we wouldn't have got through the door, because everyone wants evidence, don't they? They want the example. How the hell do you provide evidence when you're creating something new? And particularly when you want to change stuff. If you want to change stuff, people aren't really interested. They want more of the same. But that's where really smart philanthropists, you know, can step in. They want to see all this too. They're not going to just fund some idea, but they're prepared to take a risk. So we built this model. And again, you go where you need to go to find the money. But if you've got those other things in place, as I think the guys before us said, you know, the pitch becomes easy because you've done the work. And that's the fourth one. Work. Enough said. What's the next one? Patience and timing. So you got to work. There's no, you know, working hard doesn't guarantee success. But I haven't met a successful person that hasn't worked hard. You know, that sort of story. So you've just got to work your ring out. And that's what sustains you, is the heart and the instinct, you know? So you kind of, it all works together. And the pacing and timing's bit, well, this is just, sometimes it's not your time, but it doesn't mean it's not going to be your time. And so you've got to persist, you've got to sit with it, you've got to row with the river, you know, all of the sayings, what's for you won't go by you. What else have we got? Anyway.
It's a good one about opportunity, I think. Luck.
Luck. Oh, hello.
Luck.
Luck is opportunity that you were able to capitalise on, or that you were ready for.
And that's really that. I think Tom's probably best to speak to that, but that was patience, that was timing, that's 4 years in the making, and that's going to be one of the biggest opportunities that a significant portion of our community will ever realise. Did you want to talk to that at all?
I think you've done an amazing job. Thanks, Sean. I much prefer to sing than to speak, but I think we're happy to be here as well, learning about funding, because we're still trying to figure out how to get $150,000 to do this. But I think a big part of our success has been able to see the horizon and then reverse engineer from there. So we've been talking about this show since 2019, and have taken the stepping stones through the Port Fairy Spring Music Festival, and just been really polite pests, I think, for about 4 years, and this is going to be the most beautiful thing maybe that I've ever been involved with. But it's going to be 200 people, 200 members from Southwest Victoria on stage at the Sydney Mime Music Bowl with a 70-piece Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. Which on the surface sounds really cool, but when you dig a little bit deeper and you realise that the 90-minute show is written entirely by artists from Southwest Victoria who identify with a disability. We've got 4 arrangers from all over the country who identify with a disability. We've got visual artists who are in the room who are designing the brochures and the t-shirts and the merchandise for the show. We've got videographers in the room who are creating the screen packages who identify with a disability. And you can really start to flip the world upside down and just kind of say, we're ready to go if you're ready to come along with us. And so I think if you can get that emotional investment from a really good idea, then the funding, it doesn't take care of itself, but once you kind of get people along for the ride, then it's a beautiful thing with not a bad result.
Thanks, guys.
Well, I can't follow that in any way, shape or form, but I do agree that the heart, the gut and the head and the hard work can't go anywhere without any of it, and you guys have got it in spades, so thank you. You didn't talk about how you're going to raise the 150. Was there something in a crowdfunding that you're thinking about
Great segue.
doing?
Pass the hat around. Yeah, there is. So,
And this might be the most tangible, direct thing that we might be able to speak to tonight, in amongst all the beautiful things about Heads and Hearts and Guts. There's an amazing organisation for other arts organisations who may not be aware, called the Australian Cultural Fund, and it's basically a crowdfunding website. So you put your project up, and you still have to channel your community, you still have to build your community, you have to point your community to it. You can point the philanthropic trust towards it, you can point businesses towards it, but the beautiful thing about it is that it has tax-deductible DGR status. And so any donation that's channeled through that platform is then tax deductible. And seeing that we find ourselves at the end of May, if there's anyone in the room that's just looking to clear out a little bit of extra stuff, we've got a little A6 postcard up here with a little QR code for those of you that were born after 1987, and it's got a website for those of you that were born before that time.
That's generous.
Thanks very much.
100% cake.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.